Hi, my name is Pastor Paul Pierce of Transformation Church of Baton Rouge. I'd like to share with you guys another message from our series entitled Launch. Uh, we've been talking about pushing out into the deep water, and as I want to give you a little background to this story, a story that's maybe familiar to many of you, and that is the feeding of the 5,000. Jesus was teaching the people. They were way out into the countryside. They were hungry, and there was nowhere for them to go. But a little boy offered to give Jesus his lunch, and Jesus took that little lunch of 2 fish and 5 loaves and multiplied that lunch and fed over 5,000 people. It says just the men were numbered over 5,000. So there could have been upwards of 7 or 8,000, counting women and possibly children. And it said that when they were finished feeding all the people from the little boy's lunch, that they gathered up 12 baskets full of remnants after the dinner was over. And so Jesus miraculously provided for his people once again and used it as a method of teaching his people that God will provide for them. So this story that we're going to look at now takes up after the feeding of the 5,000. So it says in verse 22 and 23 of Matthew, it says, as soon as the meal was finished, he insisted that the disciples get in the boat and go ahead to the other side while he dismissed the people. With the crowd dispersed, he climbed the mountain so he could pray by himself. He stayed there alone late into the night. Meanwhile, the boat was far out to sea when the wind came up against them, and they were battered by the waves. At about 4 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them, walking on the water. They were scared out of their wits. A ghost, they said, crying out in terror. But Jesus was quick to comfort them. Courage, it's me. Don't be afraid. Peter, suddenly bold, said, Master, if it's really you, command me to come to you on the water. And Jesus said, come ahead. Jumping out of the boat, Peter walked on the water to Jesus. But when he looked down at the waves, churning beneath his feet, he lost his nerve and he started to sink. He cried, Master, save me. Jesus didn't hesitate. He reached down and grabbed his hand. Then he said, faint-hearted, what got into you? The two of them then climbed in the boat. Then the wind died down. The disciples in the boat, having watched the whole thing, worshiped Jesus, saying, this is it. You are God's Son for sure. So that story is found in Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 to 23. So first of all, what we want to see is the Lord's assignment. You know, sometimes when we're in the midst of great and mighty miracles, it's difficult for us to understand that the Lord may have another plan for us. And you see, here with the disciples, he had a plan for them. Sometimes the Lord requires us to move on from the miracle place. You see, it said he insisted that they get in the boat and go to the other side. We don't know what the reason is, but we do know this, that sometimes when the Lord gives us a directive or an assignment, that it doesn't make earthly sense to us. We don't see how it makes any sense and rhyme or reason, but the best thing we can do is just obey the voice of the Lord, because when we do, we get God's blessing, and when we don't, we lose God's blessing. And so Jesus insisted that they get on the boat. So the second thing I see about this assignment is sometimes God's plan is not clear to us when he gives the assignment. And so again, we just need to obey. The disciples got in the boat. All they knew, all they had was that we're going to the other side. No instruction about what to do when they got there. No real definition as to where they were to go on the other side. Just get there. And so sometimes it's not clear. We just got to take what we have and begin to walk in the word that we have. And when we obey that and walk in the word we have, God will give us some more. Sometimes the Lord's assignment actually will bring us into adversity. You see, these men got out into the boat, and it says that the wind came up against them, and they were battered by the waves. And I thought a lot about this, and just thinking about what they've been through for the day. I mean, can you imagine 12 disciples serving over 5,000 people, ministering to them, providing food, basically being waiters and taking care of dividing up the food, and then after the meal is over, collecting what's left. So this has been a long, long day. And now Jesus has put them into a situation where they don't know where they're going. They don't really know what they're doing. And all of a sudden, adversity slams right into their boat. Come on, have you been there? Have you been into that where you've been walking with God? You've been in that miracle place. Man, it's the revival. It's powerful. God's doing great stuff. And all of a sudden he says, I need you to move over here and to just go to this place. And so in obedience, you trust the Lord and you move in that place. And the next thing, slam, you're hit with a storm. The waves are battering your life. And you're wondering, what am I doing out here? But let me tell you, the Lord said, let's go to the other side. He didn't tell the disciples, we're going to go out into the middle and sink. He said, we're going to the other side. So you can take comfort in that. But you see, when the Lord puts us on assignment, he also assures us that he's going to give us his assistance. You see, he sees and knows what we're going through. The scripture that really impresses me, Jesus is up on a mountaintop, far from the sea. It said the boys were far out into the sea. Jesus is on a mountaintop praying. But in his prayer, it says, seeing them straining at the oars, for the wind was against them. God sees the struggle. God knows about the adversity, and God is aware of everything that you and I are going through, especially when we're following his assignment. He has a definite plan for us, and he is with us, and he's going to bring us assistance. I want to tell you right now, whatever it is you're going through, if you're walking in the will of God, he knows what you're doing. He sees where you are. You're not out there alone. He is watching over you, and he's going to take care of this thing. So you can believe he's going to come to your assistance. So I want to tell you, even when you're straining at the oars and you're working as hard as you can know that God is with you. Because I know I've been in this position. Sometimes you begin to feel like, where are you, Lord? What's taking so long? Here we are. We've been obedient. We've served you all day. We've been in the miracle place, and now we're in the place of obedience, and yet we're struggling. God, where are you? And sometimes it feels like the Lord is delaying, but that's only in our mind, and we've got to overcome that. You see, it says it was about in the fourth watch of the night. The fourth watch of the night is around 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 a.m. Wow. Just imagine what a long, long day these guys have been. And now they're out there battling for their lives against a storm in a little rowboat where they've got oars pushing against the water. And their body is beaten and battered by the waves. Their muscles are aching. Their mind is racing with all of the things that could happen. But the Lord sees and knows, and he came to them. You see, he's going to bring that assistance to us, even when we think it's not coming at the right time. I can assure you that we can always see in the Word that Jesus is never early, but he's also never late. He's always right on time. So sometimes the Lord has a plan in this, and that he intends for you and I to push through the adversity. Because you see, in that scripture says, in the fourth watch of the night, he came walking on the water, intending to pass them by. Jesus saw them struggling. Jesus saw the effort. He saw the pain and the discomfort, the worry, the fear, the anxiousness of their spirit. He saw all of that, and yet he knew, I told them they're going to go to the other side. And so he intended to walk past them. There are some times when Jesus is allowing us to push through that adversity. He wants us to strain. He wants us to try. He wants us to work hard at it because he's got a plan, and sometimes that plan is greater than even our own struggle. And so that's his intention. But he says, I am coming, and he's going to intend to walk by. And so he's using this in a way. So what I see here is this is the Lord's assessment. You see, everything in life is a test. And they're not all pass-fail. Most tests are beneficial to us whether we pass or fail. And we'll see that in just a moment. But the first thing I want us to understand is the Lord is moved by our adversity. He sees it. He knows all about where you are. He knows the struggle that's going on within inside of you. He knows the depression you may be battling. He knows the fear and the anxiety. He knows the worry that plagues you. But the Lord is moved when He sees it, even though His intention was to pass them by, when they recognized that there was something going on beyond their means and they cried out in fear, the Lord answered them, "Do not be afraid. Courage. It's me. It's Jesus." So I'm here to tell you that the first part of this test is for us to recognize that Jesus is with us through that test. And you don't have to be afraid whatever it is that you're going through. But see, the Lord is going to use these opportunities to test our faith and commitment. He's using this as a way to build character and develop our faith. And so Peter recognizing, wow, this is Jesus. This is amazing. Lord, if that's really you, then call me to come on the water and I will come. And then he said he jumped right out into the water. Peter, sometimes emotional, sometimes reacting to the things that are happening, but he's always quick to respond to the Lord when he spoke. When he knew that it was Jesus, it was easy for him to jump out. How about you? When the Lord is speaking, is it easy for you to jump out of that boat? I mean, right into the waves that have been battering the boat, right into the adversity. He jumped out into it, believing that no matter what, Jesus was going to catch him. Hey, do you have that kind of faith and commitment? This is the reason that you're in the midst of this storm right now. God's assessing you. He's checking it out. He's testing you through this. And his tests are never pass fail. There are always lessons for us to learn either way. Because you see, Peter immediately responded and jumped out of the boat. And he didn't jump out onto the water. He jumped out onto his faith. When you and I jump out on our faith holds us up. Jesus wasn't walking on water. He was walking over the circumstances that were battering the boat. He was working on top of the situation that the disciples were afraid of. And I'm here to tell you, he's over our circumstances. He's not in them. And when we get out there and trust him, he's going to take care of us. And so Peter jumps out onto the water and begins to walk out his faith and showing I'm coming to you, Lord. I'm coming to you. But all of a sudden, the circumstances begin to overwhelm him again. He begins to trust his senses more than he trusts his spirit within him. He began to trust his eyes, what he could see, his ears, the roaring of the waves, the feeling of the water all over him. And he said, oh my God, people are not supposed to walk on the water. Look at those waves. It's horrible. And he began to sink. His faith let him down. But see, the test is not pass or fail, because we can learn something either way. Because immediately when he cried out, the Lord reached out to him, and the Lord saved him from that. It's an amazing thing to understand. That test, Peter passed because the other 11 disciples were still in the boat. They never even got out. There's so many times when God's calling you, and you got to be bold, and you got to have faith to rise up so you'll jump out of the boat. But then you got to persevere in that faith, even when circumstances are against you, even when you believe that everything is against you, and your eyes are telling you one thing, your ears are telling you something, but your spirit man inside is crying out, it's Jesus. You got to press through that and believe. But even when we falter in our faith, Jesus extends his hand to pull us out. And boy, what's awesome is we get a better revelation of his mercy and of his grace. He could have let Peter sink, but he didn't. And here it says the disciples in the boat watched the whole thing and they worshiped him. You see, the point of this is Jesus is allowing all of this to take place in your life and in my life for us to get a greater revelation of his power and his presence. He wants us to know him, like Paul prayed, that I might know you in the power of your resurrection. So Jesus is giving us a greater revelation through this. There's sometimes we can only see the miracle man. There's sometimes we can only see the healer. Sometimes we can only see his provision. But there are times when Jesus allows us to push through adversity, when we see him for who he really is, the Lord of the universe who's over all things. I pray today that God gives you a greater revelation of who He is as you persevere and push through the adversity facing you, and you trust that you hear the voice of the Lord and step out, trusting Him to take care of you. He sees, He knows, and He's compassionate towards you, and He's calling you today to step out. So come on, what will you do today? Will you sit in the boat and cower with your friends, or will you be bold and step out on your faith? This is P3 out.